Fox News Podcasts presents the Bret Baier Podcast, Common Ground.
There are a number of senators on the Republican side that continue to want to find common ground.
We emphasize the conflict and controversy sells, and I think that's a problem because most Americans look at Washington and see something that's broken.
Why don't we look for ways that we celebrate what this country is capable of doing?
It's amazing what you can do when you get off social media and you start talking and communicating with one another because there is common ground.
With Fox News chief political anchor Bret Baier.
99% of all American manufacturers are small businesses, and I've heard it firsthand. They are being gutted by dumping cheap goods that produced by cheap labor overseas. We have to end that, and that's what President Trump's doing.
It is estimated that the average American family will pay more than $5,000 out of their pocket to pay for these tariffs. We're going to fight these tariffs tooth and nail.
Tonight, our Common Ground segment focuses on the Trump tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs. Joining us, Virginia Democratic Senator Tim Kaine and Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul. Thank you both for being here. Senator Kaine, you've got this resolution, this proposal that blocks tariffs on Canada. Explain what this is, this joint resolution, and obviously you have some Republicans signing on.
Absolutely, and I'm really happy that Rand Paul is a co-sponsor. We are opposed to the Canada tariffs for two reasons. One, we don't like tariffs, especially broad-based, generally applied tariffs. And two, we don't like government by executive emergency declaration. Trade is an Article I power for Congress. Congresses of both parties have delegated too much of this power over to a president. But when a president says Canada is in an emergency status and we need to impose a tax on the say-so of one person, we're using a little used Senate procedure to stand up and challenge the president's declaration and imposition of these taxes.
Senator Paul, you hear the president saying it's not fair what countries are doing to us on a host of different products, and he does single out Canada of what they've been doing on different products, up to 100, 200% on some of them. What's the rationale for getting behind this?
Well, one, we should not live under emergency rule. The Constitution said taxes are raised by Congress. Most specifically, taxes originate in the House and come to the Senate. So I'm against emergency rule. But on the tariffs in particular, on the idea of trade, trade is proportional to wealth. The last 70 years of international trade has been an exponential curve upwards, and the last 70 years of prosperity has been upwards also. We are richer because of trade with Canada, and so is Canada. Whenever you trade with somebody, when an individual buys somebody else's product, it's mutually beneficial or you wouldn't buy it. If the trade is voluntary, it's always beneficial. There is no Canada versus the U.S. The consumer wins when the price is the lowest price. Tariffs raise prices and they're a bad idea for the economy.
But what if this is part of a giant negotiation here? Here is the Ontario Premier, Doug Ford. Take a listen.
You have tariffs on a whole number of products.
That's right. And we'd be willing to take those off tomorrow if he took all the tariffs off. We are not the problem. China's the problem. And he's taking a blind eye to China as they continue to build their critical mineral mass. We have all the critical minerals that our great neighbors need.
Now, what happens, Senator Kaine, if Canada says, you know, we'll go to zero if you go to zero? We saw that with Israel. We're hearing words that maybe India is going to do that. What if this is a giant negotiation weapon and you're kind of going through the motions there on Capitol Hill?
Bret, my worry is it's much more than that, because if it was just a negotiation, the president has an avenue to negotiate. He negotiated the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, the update of NAFTA after 20 years. President Trump can claim credit for that. He got nearly 90 votes for it in the Senate in his first term. He should use the tools that he created to find a resolution of any disputes that are legitimate. But for some reason, he's bypassing that.
We'll hear more after this. Senator Paul, is this really just symbolic? Because the president could obviously veto this if it got past the House.
Only if you think the Constitution is symbolic and doesn't mean anything. The Constitution says taxes originate in the House and come to the Senate. Taxes are the purview of Congress, not of one person. So symbolic or not, I think it's an incredibly important argument. Can the president raise taxes without the approval of Congress? Tariffs are taxes, and that's what he intends to do. So there's two arguments. One is the constitutional argument, but the second argument is an economic argument. And tariffs are just bad. International trade is mutually beneficial, and that's how we've gotten richer and richer and richer. 100,000 people escape poverty every day around the world because of international trade and capitalism. We need more of it, not less.
And Senator Paul, you think this could get through the House?
The House is blocking it right now through a trickery. What they've done is they've said you're supposed to bring this bill forward in a certain amount of days. The House voted to declare the days no longer exist. So as long as they're in session, they aren't counting the days as days. They just disappear. Through chicanery and trickery, the House is going to refuse to have this vote. And I think it's a terrible way to treat the Constitution, through trickery and chicanery.
And Bret, what I'll say on that is the House has turned off the privilege, so they're not required to have the vote, but they aren't blocked from having it either. So if we can get this passed here, especially with some bipartisan support, we're going to go to the House and say, hey, folks, you're hearing from your constituents that they don't want more taxes just like we are. Take this bill up.
You all have worked together on the authorization of the use of military force, trying to update that, change that. You've worked together on other things. Is this a change in working together? Obviously, this one, you're pretty united on the tariff issue.
What I would say is I look to Senator Kaine as somebody who is open to listening. I try to be open to listening. I try to make decisions not on whether it's a Republican president or a Democrat president on the issue. And I think, frankly, that we don't always agree, but we can find places to agree simply by having a civil discussion.
Yeah, and I will say about Rand, this is what you want to say about a colleague. If I can convince him on the merits, will he stick and not be swayed by a poll or anybody's arm twisting them? I may not convince him on the merits. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Rand Paul's a guy, when you convince him on the merits, you can take it to the bank. That's the highest compliment you can pay to a colleague.
Well, we appreciate you both coming on. We'll see where this goes. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bret.
Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.